this is like what makes us, like, our communism, our version, like what we are. So yeah, I'll start. There we go. Okay, so permanent revolution. What is a permanent revolution? The theory of permanent revolution has been used throughout Marxism since early days. This theory regained traction under Leon Trotsky, and it is what makes us stand out as communists slash socialists, compared to other, quote unquote, forms of, communism in name that we've seen throughout history. The intention of this discussion, what I'm trying to do is discuss the historical discourse that has gone on around this theory, kind of explain the theory a little bit, and then how can we use this theory to understand situations, and how can we use it to best like organize. So to start off, just give a little background on Leon Trotsky and who he was and what significance he has to the history of communism. So he was born 7 November 1879, and he was assassinated on the 21st of August 1940. I don't know his real name, but his like writing, I just can't pronounce it, but he went by Leon Trotsky. He was a Russian Marxist revolutionary, political theorist, politician, ideologically a communist. He developed a variant of Marxism known as Trotskyism, which is how we never communists identify politically. The biggest thing that makes Trotskyism a tradition is the theory of permanent revolution. It's one of the like defining things that kind of separates him from a lot of the other forms that people call communism. Trotsky is not his. Yeah, I already said that. During his early years of political, like in his early political years, Trotsky was a Menshevik. He was kind of less radical in a sense, and was against the Bolsheviks during the early years, especially around the time of the 1905 revolution. After 1905, Trotsky was exiled, and during this time, moved around a lot. And at one point, he was living in New York and everything. I thought that was kind of cool. But after 1917's February Revolution ending with the monarch falling, Trotsky returned to Russia and became a leader of the Bolsheviks, changed his stance with the Mensheviks. He ended up becoming a chairman of the Petrograd Soviet. He played a key role in the October Revolution, which overthrew the new provisional government. Once in government, Trotsky initially held the post of the Commissar of Foreign Affairs and was involved in discussions that pulled Russia out of the First World War. From 1918 to 1925, he was in charge of the Red Army and played the vital role in the Bolsheviks' victory during the Russian Civil War. And this is kind of where things really start to change, and where we argue our point of like we stand in the true form of like what communism is in its essence. But after Lenin's death, Stalin started to consolidate power, and Trotsky was removed from his positions and eventually expelled from the Soviet Union in February 1929. He spent the rest of his life in exile, writing and engaging in open critique against Stalinism. In 1938, Trotsky and his supporters founded the Fourth International in opposition to Stalin's Comintern. After surviving multiple attempts on his life, he eventually was assassinated in Mexico. So now kind of we have like a little like historical background. We can kind of go into like what this idea was and like why the word like, or why Trotskyism, I guess, in a sense, has been so, I mean, why it was like bastardized and everything. So this theory can be referred to as permanent revolution or the uninterrupted revolution. Sometimes the term permanent revolution makes it sound like a constant state of misery, but in fact, we're already like in that constant state. So permanent revolution is an easy concept to understand, but is also abstract and nuanced. So like this kickoff by no means or anything will like fully like scratch this, but like it'll just give us a good starting point. In the Socialist Workers article that was posted, Paul Diamano presented the first time the permanent revolution idea was hinted at was in 1815. after seeing some of the shortcomings of the 1848 revolution. And then there's a quote from Marx and Engels. Let me see. It is our interest and our task to make revolution permanent until all the more or less property classes have been driven from the ruling positions. But after around 1850, the idea just kind of like disappeared. It really didn't keep traction until like Trotsky revisited it and really like kind of expounded on it and made it his own. So by the 20th or early 20th century, so 1900s and everything, Marxists and the concept this concepts that were like the primary concept that people were like arguing against was like stages or the stagism, that locations had to go through their, on their road to socialism. So basically places had to have like a bourgeois revolution. And then after coming to these conditions and the increase in material conditions, workers then would be, fit to overtake this stuff. During early 1900s, Russia was like super backwards, but capital had started to develop. So everyone had this idea that the working class would have to push on the bourgeois revolution because no other class would do it. So Trotsky, however, he didn't take this position because he kind of understood. Also, one of his other theories is that capitalism develops unevenly. So that doesn't mean that these stages or whatever are necessarily things that are going to happen. So he kind of asks the simple questions of like, why do we have to stop at the capitalist state and develop these certain areas? Like, why can't we just continue on to the, socialism? Like, who says that we have to spend certain times? At least, this is my understanding. But in like Trotsky's book, Permanent Revolution, it's more of a response to like Stalin and the ideas of Stalinism and socialism in one country. And how this again, these ideas of stages and results in prospects, like his paper Results and Prospects talks more about his ideas on permanent revolution. So I highly recommend like reading more of that. So the theory of permanent revolution is closely connected to the law of uneven and combined development. Trotsky had a good understanding of capital development unevenly. Capital developed unevenly, so therefore revolutions wouldn't look the same. You can't follow a stage process or like a script. Capital doesn't look the same way, so why should revolutions kind of like follow these, historical stages? Capital is centered around individual success and gains. Capitalists need the world market or need the world for market reasons, thus bringing others into cooperation. But the bigger capitalists, like Western powers and things, still aim to subjugate. So we can look at like capitalism is spewed everywhere. It's in like India, for instance, but capitalism in India and capitalism in America is different because America is the dominant capitalist force. So they can, they control and they make, they put these still pressures on. So the start of the 20th century was the time of imperialism too. That was a big thing going on. So through imperialism of the 20th century, capitalism had created a global economy that linked productive forces in a world division of labor. So with uneven development of capital, such as the new small Russian working class that kind of came out of like the 1905 and was starting to develop around, even though there was still technically like feudalism. Class, compared to this small working class in like Britain, for example, it had not gone through a century of reformisms and bourgeois democracy. Russian workers were more militant, had fewer illusions about capitalism than their Western counterparts, and were politically far more advanced. Lenin initially believed that because of Russia's underdevelopment and its weak bourgeois class, completing a bourgeois democratic revolution as in France would be possible only through an alliance of workers and peasants. Trotsky disagreed with Lenin's formulation. He felt the peasant class, which was made up of independent producers, would not be able to unify around common demands and would be politically torn in different directions. And in Permanent Revolution, he actually kind of uses this like description of it's like a door being held open, and they can go one way or another. So, in summary, the theory of permanent revolution is a recognition that capital has become global, therefore socialism must be global. It can't be in just one state. The theory also recognizes that these socialist revolutions won't happen one right after another. They won't look the same, but the aim is for them to continue globally. The theory of permanent revolution, in turn, provides a powerful argument against reformist, quote unquote, two-stage theories still popular in left and even among liberals who today still assert the right wing must be defeated and bourgeois democracy must be installed before independent worker struggles can begin. How can we use this in our organizing and discussions? We first can bring up to people that the idea of communism we see or have been told isn't what it is. It's because capital is still a dominating force during the USSR times, during China, during Cuba, et cetera, et cetera. If there is still a market or markets, governments will have to participate to an extent. This participation eventually will lead to reforms and the liquidation of the revolution in general. If the aim isn't the evolution of global capital, then socialism can't be achieved. We can simply look at capital and its success. It's successful in maintaining power because it has penetrated every aspect of the globe. Socialism must do the same. It must penetrate every aspect of the globe for it to be successful. It must be an international struggle, an uninterrupted or a permanent revolution. Oops, sorry, that was it.